Yes.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Morning.
My name is Kantaro Suzuki from the Daily Manila Shimbun, Japanese newspaper. Well, my question is about the territory of the Bangsamoro.
Territory. Bangsamoro. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
MOA AD in 2008. It was the Palawan was included in as an agreement in 2008, but this time a framework agreement doesn't include the Palawan as a territory of the Bangsamoro. Could you explain why why the Palawan was excluded this time, even though there's still the chance to become part of the Bangsamoro? Is it because it becomes a problematic if the Bangsamoro claims Palawan as a part of the Bangsamoro?
No, they stated that recognized people who can trace their ancestry to the areas enumerated as part of the Bangsamoro peoples. Now, I think it is a significant concession on the part of the MILF, twofold. No? One is a limitation of the areas that they want as part of the new political entity. But more importantly, the concession also that everybody will have to give their consent by way of a plebiscite and decision of whether to opt into this new political entity. So it is again indicative of their desire to really achieve a just settlement to the lingering issues which have taken almost 2 generations already of our countrymen. So, yeah, I think it should be pointed out that it is a very mature perspective and it is a very doable perspective in terms of delineating the territory that they would want to be part of the new political entity. And this resulted obviously from a lot of negotiations. I think we had 13 talks during our time.
Thank you. One more question. What kind of support would you expect from the Japanese government before the Bangsamoro Transition Authority is established in 2016?
So, the first time I met with the Chairman Murad was in Tokyo. That already they're part of the international contact group. We asked them if they could host it, and they responded in a very timely manner. I'm not even sure if there was like a week that they had to prepare, perhaps just days. So, and that was then. Now we were talking to the Vice President of JICA, and they've already indicated the support that they have given in the past. But more importantly, once this is the Transition Commission finishes its work, there's a transition authority that comes in, the desire to continue assisting the entire region for regional stability and really to ensure that the peace lasts because people have a stake already in their governance.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, sir. I'm Dana Batnag from GG Press. My question would be a follow-up to the last question. Will the Philippines ask for additional ODA from Japan, especially for projects for the Bangsamoro region?
Meron tayo nasa pipeline ngayon, di ba?
Yes, sir.
We just there are already various projects in the pipeline with them, but more importantly, by January, there's a Philippine Development Forum scheduled in January in Davao, which will talk further and more details about the assistance that we will be seeking for this new political entity.
My other question is, there's a scheduled foreign ministerial conference between Philippines and China on Friday. Will the Philippines raise the issue of Scarborough Shoal or the South China Sea dispute during this meeting? What are your instructions to the DFA?
there are no changes to the instructions for the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. So he has been Party 2 and Privy and the Chief Architect also, in the sense of all their steps towards resolving this issue. So there are no changes as to his instructions there. It is a continuation of the previous instructions.
So, sir, will we raise the Scarborough Shoal issue in the Friday's meeting?
Perhaps you should inquire from the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. No?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Good morning, President. I'm Emerson, Intra News Agency of Taiwan. Taiwan and Philippines are neighbors, and there are about 90,000 Filipinos working in Taiwan. And Taiwan and Philippines are top 5 trade partners to each other. And Taiwan is interested in having a free trade agreement with the Philippines to further enhance the trade relations. What is your position on this, sir?
FTA wala tayo problema sa kanila. We are precluded from entering into a free trade agreement with Taiwan, primarily because of the One China policy. But there have been economic meetings between the Philippines and Taiwan that seeks to even broaden and perhaps induce the return of previous investors who for one reason or another left the Philippines. And I understand, or I'm made to understand, that there have been very significant developments as far as that aspect is concerned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sir, Joel Ginto from Bloomberg. Sir, you're approaching the middle of your term. Have you increased tax collection efficiency enough to hold off new taxes? And will there be a review of your policy not to impose new taxes?
Di ba? The only tax we want imposed or we want an increase of is the sin tax issue.
15, goal 18. We started at 13.
Okay. We started at 13%, 13
to GDP.
13% tax collection efficiency measured against GDP. We're now at 15. The target is 18. So yes, tax administration has improved under our watch by a significant 2%. Right. Will it be enough to stay above? As I said in my speech, the cost of borrowing is low. There will be, perhaps, it would be the reverse that we are a little bit apprehensive of. We are a magnet for a lot of investments, and if we don't have the capacity to absorb, then that will be an inflationary pressure. But so far, the Bangko Sentral has been doing its job adequately, and we're trying to accelerate the processes involved in government to be able to respond to all of these infusions from so many sectors.
Sir, what is the government doing to ensure that the version of the sin tax law will deliver adequate revenues?
What are we doing to ensure?
Sir, because the version of Senator Recto, the committee report is only half of the revenue that we would get from the House version of the bill.
Well, we are meeting with the senators. The executive is meeting with the senators. They asked for specific members of the executive, the Secretary of Finance,
3 o'clock this afternoon.
the BIR Commissioner,
And the Department of Health.
and the Department of Health. No, we'll be meeting with the senators in a caucus at 3
o'clock.
3 o'clock this afternoon. Precisely to, again, state our positions with regards to the rates and various other details of the sin tax measure.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President. I'm Jam from Al Jazeera. We'd just like to go back to the Mindanao issue. Now that the framework agreement has been signed, obviously the ceasefire is going to be in place until the transitional mechanism becomes successful. Sir, we just want to ask you, how do you intend to deal with the insurgency still? That's a problem in Mindanao. The BIFF is still there, still quite a significant and worrying force. In an interview with Al Jazeera once, Vice Chairman for Political Affairs, Jafar, actually mentioned that they are willing to go after the BIFF, but are just in respect of the current discussions with the Philippine government, they have not done so. That's the first question. Second question would be, what are your reactions with the statements that the MNLF Chairman, Nur Miswar, has been saying, warning of this effectively, what they expect sorry, it's going to be a failure, they said, of the framework agreement. He warned that this framework agreement might be a failure, considering that MNLF's agreement with the Philippine government in the 1990s actually is a failed experiment.
With regards to the BAFF, we have the MILF, who are now a significant partner. They've already demonstrated when the BAF allegedly perpetrated a lot of atrocities during the midst of these discussions. They have contained the same. They have actually demonstrated their capacity to police their areas. So it is not a hypothetical theory. It is an actual practice that they were effective in helping us maintain the so-called outbreak of violence that the BAFF was stating. Okay. Now, with regards to Chairman Miswari's statements, this might be a failed experiment. It is in the realm of possibility, but what is reality is that the arm experiment is failed or has failed. And therefore, would it be prudent on our part to continue the failed experiment and the structures that led to a worsening of the situation? Or should we, as rational beings, step back and say, where were we wrong and how do we address and how do we correct it? So as to address the aspirations of our brothers in the arm or the new political entity.
Mr. President, last question though. Is there an intention to include those forces that of the MNLF that, as reviewed, are currently scattered because of the lack of strong leadership of the MNLF? Is there a plan in the future?
We have tried to be as inclusive as possible. Not just our Muslim brothers, but also the Lumans, Christians, the various civil society organizations, academe. You name every entity that is a stakeholder, and we have tried to be as inclusive as possible. And to those that opted not to participate, we are still open to getting them to participate in the process of effecting the changes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. President. Jason Gutierrez from Agence France Presse. I've got a follow-up question to that one. With a lot of these uncertainties hanging in the air, the BIFF and Nur Miswari questioning the agreement, how far down along the road will we see actual investments, real hard money pouring into Mindanao, considering that the MNLF agreement in 1997 took years before they actually signed in 1996?
Well, even in the absence of this framework agreement, investments have been flowing into Mindanao. May I ask you to visit any of the other areas besides that? Again, De Oro comes to mind, Davao comes to mind. In fact, every time I visit those areas, it seems that their landscape keeps on changing. But other than that, government will be, for this year, will be putting in 21 on budget GA plus in about government is putting about 21 billion in 2012 for various needs in what is now the arm, be it schools, be it teachers, various other infrastructure, livelihood, etc. This is about 11 coming GA or 10, 11 1.8 GA budget support sa arm. Tapos yung additional natin is about 11 GA and about 9.
Sir, just to clarify, you said 21 billion? Billion pesos.
About 21 billion.
21 billion.
So don't hold me to it. Baka naman kulang ng a few hundred million here and there. But roughly, it's about 21 billion.
And this will be spent on infrastructure, airports, schools?
In basic services infrastructure.
The other question, sir,
no airports in ARM right now. That we will be improving. Not in ARM right now. Again, schools. Kaya no more ghost school that is populated with a ghost teacher which has a real student that is not getting anything. No. There's a program called Beam ARM, which specifically addresses not just schools, it also includes libraries, madrasas, etc.
Okay. Just in relation to that, what kind of assurance can we give potential international investors in terms of security in Mindanao now that the framework agreement has been signed?
Again, may I just point out that one group threatened to unleash a lot of violence, and they were prevented by an actor that previously was not a direct partner of government, no? And I refer specifically to the MILF. So besides the security forces of the state, the MILF is an active, very active component of preserving the peace in Mindanao.
Sir, just one last question on China. Still in the context of the China question, the United States is planning a strategic pivot in Southeast Asia. I just would like to know how do you foresee the Philippines playing a role in this entire configuration?
We are allies. We are treaty allies. We have a mutual defense treaty that has existed for several decades. Again, we go back to their strategic partners. We have the shared background and shared values. So we will assist our ally.
Has there been any negotiations for Subic and Clark?
No, no such thing. At this point.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Rose.
Rose Francisco, sir, from Reuters. Sir, just a follow-up to the sin tax question, how hopeful are you that it still be passed in the current Congress given the tight legislative schedule for the remainder of this Congress before the elections? And do you have a plan B as to what the government can do to raise taxes, or raise revenues? You've said that we've raised the tax to GDP rate to 15%, but it's not enough to impress credit rating agencies so as to raise our ratings to investment grade.
I think you just answered the question. Elections. There are several senators who are opting to run for next year's elections. Incumbent senators who will ask for re-election. And how can anybody say that they are opposed to an effective sin tax measure? That is very impolitic. So, do we need a plan B in terms of if it doesn't pass? I really am confident that it will pass. No? We have stated the same to our allies in the Senate of how important this measure is, as well as the AMLA measure, amongst others. No? Will it pass given the tightness of the schedule? I think there is sufficient time to really thresh out all of the details and come up with something that is that they can fully support. Okay. I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Sir, I was asking about raising revenues further because at this point, credit rating agencies are not impressed enough to raise our credit ratings to investment grade. Also, sir, on that note...
Can I ask Secretary Purisima to answer this because I can feel he's so itching to answer that particular question. And I think he disagrees with your assessment of the credit rating agencies.
I think the market disagrees with the credit rating agencies. The market rates us at 2 notches above investment grade right now, and based on bond implied ratings. And I think the Philippines is the most underrated country if you compare bond implied ratings against credit rating agencies. No, I think that's the most important point. The second is they've had 8 positive credit ratings actions since the Aquino administration took over. And third, we've been able to create a lot of increases in education, 33% since President Aquino took over. Health, 63% since President Aquino took over. CCT, 295% increase. And yet we still have a lot of fiscal space. No? So I don't really know what they're referring to.
Debt to GDP.
Debt to GDP has gone down.
Okay. Just a follow-up. Sir, how important is it to bag that investment grade credit rating? And is it a priority for the government to get that, let's say, in the next 6 months? Are we doing something?
Especially for those who are not aware of us at this point in time, that induces them to take a look at us. But as Secretary Purisima stated, no, we are getting terms for our loans that are better than investment grade. So I won't be complaining that we're getting even better, better terms than what we would have if we had the investment grade. I think we're tackling a triviality in a sense, no? Rather than the important issue. The reality is we're securing debt with lesser interest, which redounds to more impact for our people.
And sir, just one more question. One more question on another matter on mining, sir. Mining reform. You mentioned it in your SONA that you want to raise the mining tax. it wasn't taken up by this Congress. Will you ask the next Congress to make it, or will you make it a priority measure for the next Congress? And another question on mining, sir. Sagittarius Mines has filed an appeal with your office for their ECC. Are you taking it up, sir? Are you inclined to grant their appeal for an ECC in the Tampakan project, or will you be more inclined to probably reject or deny it?
Well, again, first in terms of revenues, our position is government gets something like less than 10% of what they make. But we have 100% if there is a problem that crops up. Meaning, for instance, one of the oldest firms, mining firms in the country, suffered multiple failures of their tailings pond. And that redounds to quite a significant impact on the environment. We still stick with our position that there has to be a reformulation of the governing law with regards to the mining industry. And we would rather not continue the situation or also the risks until the remedies or the corrections in the mining laws will be corrected. So, it's subject to review. I think the safest position would be to await this new amendments, to the amendments to the law, so that we don't grant something that we would be changing almost as soon as we granted it.
So, sir, just to clarify, your last sentence, is that referring to Tampakan, meaning they have to wait for the new law? Is that it for their?
That is a statement in general about the mining industry. And if it will be defined as a new operation, then it will fall into that category.
Okay, Rose. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, President. And I'm sorry for there are so many questions about China today, but I think my question won't be so difficult to answer. My question is that we know that there is a big major power transition will coming, and my question is, do you have any expectation for the next Chinese general leaders?
Well, again, as I stated, there will be pressures leading up to the transition. We hope that these pressures, domestic pressures in China, will be lessened after the transition, so that we would have more room to negotiate and to discuss in more reasonable terms and less ultra-nationalist tones.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. President, Carl Malakunas from Agence France Presse. My question is in regards to cybercrime law. Just in regards to your mantra over your term to improve human rights in the Philippines, how does opening the path and allowing people to be jailed for posting defamatory comments online improve the human rights situation in the Philippines?
Well, can I just state for the record, as the Chief Executive of this land, when the proposed measure was brought before me, I have basically two options. If under the Constitution, if I agree with the same, I sign it into law. If I disagree with the same, I veto everything. I only have a line veto on the budget measure. I don't have a line veto on other measures. So if I really fail to sign the law, then the provisions on identity fraud or to prevent identity fraud, the porn, the other aspects sought to be penalized by this law would have been left again in limbo. Can I just give you an example? We have a anti-wiretapping act. I think it's Republic Act 4200, crafted sometime in the early 60s. It defines how do you, the devices that you can use, how do you commit the crime. Unfortunately, most of the enumerated methods of wiretapping no longer exist. And perhaps those of us who are younger in this room will not even know what a dictaphone is. But these are the type of items that are in the law, but not necessarily existing in reality. In fact, our jurisprudence says that unless there's a physical wire that you actually tap into, then you cannot be guilty of wiretapping or illegal wiretapping. We now have the internet. My position is simple. When I read the law, and I read it, I think 3 times, or the proposed measure, it just said that there's an existing provision on libel in the revised penal code. And libel through print a libelous statement in print that is sanctioned should also be a libelous statement in the broadcast media, should also, if it is still the same statement existing on the net, should also still be libelous. Now, there shouldn't be an exemption if, based on what format, okay? Now, the issue is increased penalties, etc., the arbitrary closing, etc. The IRR, the implementing rules and regulations, have to be crafted, and that's when we can solicit, especially from those who are reasonable individuals, to perfect that which is made by an imperfect being, which is man. No? So we are open to having amendments to it. The executive's function is to enforce the law. No? We cannot choose not to enforce a law that is existing. So how does it? Can you just finish? How does it enhance? We are taught when we were in the elementary, we all have freedom of speech, but our freedoms and all our rights are also guarded by the rights of others. When they impinge on the rights of others, then there are practical limitations. The oft-cited example is when you're in a movie house. You don't have the freedom of speech to say that there's a fire when there isn't any. So I think the discourse should also be cognizant of the rights of all parties, and not just that of the blogger.
And in regards to the penalties, are you personally in favour of people being jailed for defamation or libel, whether it's on the internet or in print? Should that be a criminal offence, or should it just be, as in the US and other major countries, a civil problem?
I'm divided between sometimes the personal side and the public side. But I think I fully subscribe to the idea of decriminalizing it, but not lessening the atmosphere to encourage irresponsibility in certain quarters.
So you are personally in favour of decriminalising?
Yes.
Thank you.